Hey guys, Frosted Knives here, situating my hat, back with another book review. And today we're going to be reviewing the final book in what is a loosely based battered women's trilogy, for lack of a better term. We're going to be talking about Stephen King's bookmark out of the way, Rose Matter. Final book in a trilogy that deals with the same subject matter, namely domestic violence, its ramifications, and what happens with it. We talked about Gerald's Game, talked about Dolores Claiborne, and now we're talking about Rose Matter. I have it here, paperback here, and I also have the hardcover right here. Obligatory thumbnail. Don't smile so creepy, Adam. And Stephen King's Rose Matter, published in you'd think I'd be more prepared for this, 1995. The paperback clocking in at a respectable 479 pages. Hardcover clocking in at 420 pages. Ooh, for those of you who like the magical 420 number. And as I had mentioned in the other in the other reviews, maybe in Dolores Claiborne, this is my least favorite of the three books that we just covered. My least favorite. So we're finally getting to a book by Stephen King that I am not thrilled about, that I am not gung-ho about. We knew this would eventually happen. Up until now, we've been talking, and I've been giving good reviews because I've been reviewing all of the books that I really like. And now we're getting to a book that I'm not so thrilled at. And let me just preface that by saying, even when Stephen King churns out a bad book or a book that's not as good as his other books, even on his worst day, Stephen King is still a better writer than most people churn out on their best day. So even though this may not be, in my opinion, a book you need to go out and read and one of his best books and one of his better books, he is still a damn good writer. He still writes well. He still puts other people to shame on their best days. So that's not to say that this book is horrible in that respect. Even if it's garbage, it's King garbage, and it's still good garbage, if that makes any sense. Not that this is garbage, but you get what I'm saying. So here's the story. It's very similar to the other stories. Rose Daniels is married to her husband, Norman. Why could he have picked such a shittier name for a douchebag? Norman. Norman, he's coming for you. That just right there, you can tell he's a dickhead. No offense to anybody out there whose actual name is Norman, but brings back horrible memories in my own mind of people in my past. So her husband Norman is a cop. He is also a psychopath. He is a sick MFer. He is twisted, and they're married for about 14 years, and he's abusive to her. And we're not going to go into detail about the abuse, but it's horrible. It is horrible abuse. It is physical. It is everything. It is just bad. It's really, really bad, really hard to read, just really awful stuff that he does to her. She finally gets away. She flees. She steals his bank card and she flees. She flees west, and they don't really tell you where she ends up. It's sort of like she just flees to a city, and that's fine. We don't need to know exactly where she ends up. That's not important. And she flees, and she gets involved with a battered women's shelter. It's called Daughters and Sisters, and they take women in. They help them reclaim their lives and do all the things, get back on their feet, get a job, get a place to live. And while she's in town, she buys a painting. She buys a magical painting, of course, because it's a painting in a Stephen King story, so it has to be magical. And the painting transports her to another world. Spoiler alert, the painting transports her to Midworld. Yeah, it's the doorway to the Tower World. And in that world, she goes in there, and there's Greek temples, a lot of Greek mythology, a lot of Greek overtones in this book. And, of course, Norman follows her, follows her across, follows her trail because he's a cop and that's what he does. And he finally, you know, there's the chase, and then he gets to her, and then everything that happens, you know, along the way. Finally, he chases her into the painting at the end, and we have our resolution. So that's pretty much it. For those of you who really want to know about the Tower references, I did hashtag them, and I did bookmark them. When she gets into the painting on page 237, she's talking to a woman, and the woman says, "What you do for me, I will do for you, and that's why we are brought together. That is our balance. That is our ka." And then, a couple of pages into it, a little further along, I dog-eared it again. Again, a conversation with the woman in the painting. She's talking about her, talking about how old she is. The woman's telling Rosie how old she is, and she says, "I've seen wars come and go. I've seen bodies on fire and heads by the hundreds poked onto poles along the streets of the city of Lud." So there you go. There's your 2 references to the Tower. That's all of them. I figured I'd hash mark the pages as I read so that I could tell you that's the references to the Tower. So obviously the world that she's in is somewhere in Midworld. Somewhere in Roland's world. But let's talk about the story. I didn't like it. I didn't like it as much as the other one. There's a lot of supernatural elements going on, a lot of good imagery, but man, the symbolism, the Greek symbolism, and the mythological overtones, in my opinion, was just too much. I mean, they talk about during the book how Norman is a beast of a man, and how he acts like a bull, and how he's this and how he's that. And at the end of the book, when he gets into the painting and he gets into the temple to chase Rosie, he turns into a literal bull. I mean, you know, Stephen King in an interview once said that Rose Madder was a stiff, trying too hard novel. And I can see that. The characters are okay. You really, really hate Norman for what he is and what he does, but he's so over the top. He's so over the top violent that he's almost a caricature of a violent abuser. And Rose Daniels, Rose McClendon, that's her maiden name. I could never, I don't know, I could never get into her as a character. I never really connected with her. Not the way that I connected with Dolores Claiborne, not the way that I connected with Jesse Burlingame. I just could not connect with Rose Daniels. And I hated Norman, but he was so over-the-top violent, just over the top, that he was almost a caricature of what he was supposed to be. I mean, it's a basic story, but I think Stephen King is right in when he says that is trying too hard. It's trying to be too symbolical. It's trying to be too mythological. It's trying to be too much like literature, I guess is the word. You know, out of the 3, Dolores Claiborne, in my opinion, is the one that I think shows the most realistic portrayal of someone in that situation. It reads the grittiest, the most realistic. The characters are real, so real that they feel like they're talking to you off the page. Gerald's Game was good, but again, you know, real situation. It felt not as real as Dolores Claiborne, but still felt like a situation that you could be, you know, you could relate to and sympathize with and really get into. But Rose Madder felt too, I don't know, too over the top, too supernatural, too just in your face something that and it took me too long to read it. For a book that's 470 some odd pages long, it shouldn't have taken me that long to read it. But it did, because I kept putting it down, because I just didn't really, you know, care. And then, you know, the main villain in the painting, I mean, they tried to tie her a little bit into the Tower, too, by making her kind of like, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but they tried tying that in, too. And it just, he tried so hard, I think, to tie the world of the painting into the world of the Tower that the whole book suffered. You know, the imagery is great. The writing is great. The characters are standard King fare. The descriptions are awesome. You know, the world in the painting was really good. At one point, she goes into the temple to retrieve a baby for the woman who tells her to do it. But then that sort of kind of left hanging. Like, we never really figure out anything. We're never told why she wants the baby, who the baby is, why she had to be retrieved. We just sort of go into that temple, get the baby from the bull, bring it back to me, and I owe you a debt. But it's never really explained, you know, who the baby is, or why she's important, or why she's needed, or why that woman wants you to go get her, or why she can't go in to the temple. I mean, there is a reason why she can't go into the temple, but it's kind of a silly reason. And, you know, the baby is supposed to be symbolic of the baby that Rose McDaniels miscarried, maybe. That's what he was going for, but that's really all it was. We never hear about that baby again. That baby is never brought up in the rest of the stories, never brought up in any other Stephen King story. So I'm kind of wondering why he did it. Why did he just need a hook? Did he just need, you know, quid pro quo, you do this for me, I do this for you, and he just needed sort of a hook so that this woman owed Rose Daniels something, and that's how we got the story resolved at the end? It's kind of what it felt like to me. But overall, I mean, boy, I think you could skip this one. I mean, if you are really a hardcore Stephen King fan, you want to read everything, then obviously you're going to read it. But I might skip it if I was you. Still, though, I got to give it a rating out of a 5. So out of a 0, a 5. Ah, boy. I feel like a 2 is too low, but like a 3 is right down the middle. You know, I mean, it's still the King book. It's still written well. It's still good characters, and even with the problems that I had with it, I'm gonna give it 2.5. 2.5 out of 5. That's split right down the middle. 2.5 for solid writing. Solid writing, good descriptions, good environment, good atmosphere. 2.5 for all of the standard King fare. I think all of his books are probably going to start at 2.5. You know, the rest could bomb, but we're going to go 2.5 out of 5 on Rose Matter. And that's it for this book review. That wraps up Gerald's Game, Dolores Claiborne, and Rose Matter. Leave a comment in the section below, leave a comment in the fields below. Let me know what you want me to review next, because I'm kind of waffling right now. Got a couple other things I want to do or read and whatnot. So, let me know what next King book should be on the chopping block. What King book will be on the block next time on Frosty's Mad Reviews. So until next time, keep reading, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. And until I will see you in the next video.